At 62, Demi Moore finally reveals the 5 actors she hated the most. All of those, while they may have been embarrassing and humiliating, I didn't grow old in silence. I was just waiting for the right time to name them one by one. Demi Moore was once the ultimate sex symbol of Hollywood. A warrior woman in G.I. Jane, a dangerous beauty, an indecent proposal, and the first woman to earn $12 million for a single role. Why would someone bold enough to shave her head for a part, brave enough to love a man 15 years her junior under the spotlight, end up collapsed on the floor just because she was called a relic of the golden age? Who once said she had the body but no soul? Who was the man that promised, "I'll stay with you forever," only to walk away when she broke down from a drug overdose? Who were they? And why, only now at 62, does Demi Moore dare to tell her story? The story is about to begin, and you won't believe who the final betrayer is. Demi Moore, the goddess who was flayed on Hollywood's red carpet. Demi Moore was born on November 11, 1962 in Roswell, New Mexico, USA. She wasn't born into a home. She was born into a nightmare. She grew up with an alcoholic mother, a childhood scarred by abuse, and a family that changed husbands like outfits. At 15, Demi dropped out of school. At 16, she was supporting herself. And by 18, she stepped into Hollywood like someone who had nothing left to lose. But she didn't rise by playing it safe. She broke the mold. With Ghost, 1990, Demi made the whole world cry over a spirit that couldn't touch love. With Striptease, 1996, she made the media scream not because of the nudity, but because a woman dared to strip and still stay in control with G.I. Jane. She shaved her head not just for the role, but to prove if I were a man I'd be celebrated. She was once the highest paid actress in Hollywood, had studios lining up at her door, and shared a life with Bruce Willis, envied by an entire nation. Then everything crumbled. The media smeared her as the woman obsessed with power and terrified of aging. Directors labeled her difficult to work with, no longer suitable for family audiences. She lost roles at the last minute for being no longer box office material. And worst of all, the very people who once posed with her in promos and toasted her at award shows were the same ones who helped bury her. She battled alcoholism, drug addiction, and was hospitalized for emotional exhaustion after being betrayed by Ashton Kutcher, the man 15 years her junior, right in the home they built together. Demi Moore had it all and lost it all, but the one thing she never lost was memory. And at 62, Demi Moore decided not to write a memoir. She wrote a list, 5 names she swore never to forgive. And right now, you're about to find out who the first one is. A man who once called her a goddess, then sold her body lying by gilded line. The first betrayer, the man loved by everyone except her, Bruce Willis. I'm not saying he's bald down. There. I'm just saying whichever place you look, it looks like a dick. Demi Moore met Bruce Willis in 1987, just months after ending things with Elio Estes. They fell in love fast, married even faster, had 3 beautiful daughters, and became Hollywood's golden couple. To the public, they were the picture of happiness, a perfect balance of fame and family. But to Demi, it was a marriage with a man who made her melt and then left her frozen. For 13 years as Bruce's wife, Demi sacrificed countless career opportunities just to keep the family together. She turned down roles, stepped back from the spotlight, endured nights alone while Bruce filmed far away, and listened to rumors about private parties she was never invited to. She once said, "I was the only woman who loved Bruce before the whole world did." But the moment the world began to worship Bruce as a cinematic hero, Demi vanished. She became Bruce Willis's wife, no longer Demi Moore. The most painful part, even when they starred together in Mortal Thoughts, where she played a woman interrogated about her husband portrayed by Bruce, the fear in her eyes was enacting. It was real. On screen, she kept the secrets. Off screen, she kept the tears. They divorced in 2000. The media called it an amicable split. They still appeared at parties together, co-parented gracefully, smiled on magazine covers, but no one knew. Just months after the divorce, Demi was hospitalized from emotional exhaustion, haunted by a single question looping in her mind. Who was I married to for 13 years? A husband or a demon? When Bruce went public with a new relationship just weeks later, Demi finally realized the man the world adored was never truly hers. She fell apart. In 2022, when Bruce's aphasia and dementia diagnosis brought the nation to tears, Demi stayed silent. But in her private notebook, one sentence was scribbled. "I don't hate him for leaving me. I hate that he made me believe love was enough." With Bruce Willis, Demi Moore lost her faith in marriage. And with the second man, she would lose her dignity after a leaked scene she never gave permission to be shown. The second betrayer, the boy she raised, who turned on her, Ashton Kutcher. When Demi Moore went public with her relationship with Ashton Kutcher, a handsome actor 15 years her junior, Hollywood exploded. Some called it the greatest midlife rebellion ever. Others said Demi was just clinging to her youth. But Demi believed it was real love. They posed hand in hand, beamed on red carpets, stood side by side like a living statement against society's judgment. But behind those smiles was a woman constantly wondering, am I still attractive enough for a 27-year-old man? Demi began to change. She starved herself on extreme diets, trained until exhaustion, underwent painful cosmetic surgeries, all to hold on to one thing, the gaze of the young man she called her husband. But no matter what she did, there was one thing she couldn't fight: time. In 2011, the world was stunned when headlines broke. Ashton had been caught spending the night with a 22-year-old woman on their 6th wedding anniversary. Demi said nothing. She just withered away. Less than 4 months later, she was hospitalized for physical and emotional exhaustion. But in truth, she shattered completely after reading one text message on Ashton's phone. "You were younger. You make me feel my age." They divorced quietly. But that silence was the grave of Demi's dignity. Online, she was mocked as the pathetic cougar, the ghost of jealousy, the poster child for midlife failure. Ashton moved on, married Mila Kunis, had children, rebranded himself as the family man, but Demi recorded everything. In her memoir, Inside Out, she wrote, "I don't hate that he cheated. I hate that I changed everything to keep someone and still got left like I was never good enough to begin with." With Ashton Kutcher, Demi didn't just lose a marriage, she lost her sense of self and nearly lost her life. The third betrayer was someone who once stood beside her on stage, held her hand like a teammate, and then the moment the lights went out, called her box office poison. The third betrayer, on-screen lover, backstage stranger Patrick Sees. Ghost 1990 was the film that defined Demi Moore. The pottery scene with Patrick Sees became a global cinematic icon. Audiences hummed Unchained Melody for decades. Everyone believed they were close, perfectly in sync, the golden couple that would never fade. Only Demi knew behind the camera they barely spoke. Patrick had refused to join her on the promotional tour, telling producers, "I don't work well with her. She's overly emotional." After the film's massive success, Demi tried to stay in touch, but Patrick kept his distance. He didn't reply to her letters, didn't return her calls. Worse, in a 1992 interview, when asked about his co-star, he said, "We worked well on screen. Off-screen, there's nothing to talk about." Demi wasn't angry, but she felt like she never truly existed in the memory of the man the world believed was her soulmate. And when Patrick passed away from cancer in 2009, Demi quietly sent flowers to the funeral. No public farewell, no shared tribute, just one line in her journal. "The most beautiful scene of my life was shared with someone who only saw me as a role, not a person." The fourth betrayer, hero on camera, judge behind the scenes, Tom Cruise. In 1992, A Few Good Men held America in suspense. Demi Moore stood shoulder to shoulder with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson playing Lieutenant Joanne Galloway, the lone woman on the front lines of military justice. But while audiences saw a power trio, Demi felt like the extra wheel. On set, Tom Cruise was professional but utterly cold. No eye contact, no encouragement, not even a single group meal. And once filming wrapped, he cut off all contact with her. Demi didn't take it personally until she heard a 1994 interview where Tom said about his female co-stars, "Some people try too hard to prove they're strong. But to me, real strength comes from control." She knew that was meant for her. When A Few Good Men received Oscar nominations, Demi's name wasn't mentioned. When asked by reporters, Tom simply smiled and said, "I'm not sure how much of a role she played in the film's success." Demi once believed Tom was an icon, but after all that happened, she realized he wasn't a teammate. He was a judge, and she was always the one being dismissed. He didn't shout at me like Jack Nicholson, but his gaze, that was a courtroom. With Tom Cruise, Demi didn't lose a role. She lost the right to stand as an equal. And with the final betrayer, the fifth betrayer, the man who turned her into a generation's fantasy object, Rob Lowe. About Last Night, 1986, was the launchpad that made Demi Moore a star. But to Rob Lowe, it was just a romantic movie with beautiful sex scenes. During filming, Demi worked hard, determined to shed the pretty face label, while Rob spent nights in the makeup room with fans and treated the intimate scenes as mere entertainment value. After the movie, when Rob's sex tape scandal broke in 1988, he became the media's obsession. To repair his image, he began recounting steamy scenes from About Last Night as proof of his rich sex life. Demi's name got dragged into the headlines despite having nothing to do with it. Worse, Rob once said on national television, "Demi is the ideal co-star. She always puts you in the right mood." A statement that sounded polite but reduced her in the public eye to a tool for arousing male desire. "I didn't shoot love scenes to turn anyone on. But for some people, just being a woman means that you're already an object." Rob Lowe bounced back from scandal. He was praised as the symbol of reinvention. But Demi, She kept being pulled down every time someone mentioned the bad girls of the 80s. With Rob Lowe, Demi didn't lose a role. She lost the right to be taken seriously for an entire decade. Demi Moore wasn't brought down by scandal. She was brought down by whispers behind her back, by hugs performed only for the cameras, and by five faces who once called her their muse. At 62, with no one left to please, she isn't asking for justice. She's asking to be heard. Because some wounds don't make headlines. They leave no scars, but they strip a woman of herself, bit by bit, day by day. If you ever loved a role Demi Moore played, don't walk away without sharing this truth because fame fades. But pain deserves to be remembered.